The next item of business is a statement by Shirley-Ann Somerville on COVID-19 social security. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of her statement, so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Shirley-Ann Somerville. Thank you, Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. These are indeed unprecedented times, and every one of us is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic gripping the world. Our people, our communities and our economy are facing major challenges. Tough decisions are also having to be made across government, and my portfolio is no different. As has been said so much over the last few weeks, our lives are being impacted like never before. We need to work at home if we can, and many parents are doing this alongside caring for children now at home, and we are very aware that people will be off work through their own ill health or because they are caring for loved ones. This is no different for the staff working on the Social Security programme in the Scottish Government and Social Security Scotland. Business as usual is not an option. Our entire focus is on the health and well-being of our citizens, and everyone is turning their attention to responding to this unparalleled global pandemic. So now to the difficult decisions I have had to take. All our public services need to ensure that they are doing everything they can to manage our country through this crisis, and Social Security Scotland is no different. I'm incredibly proud of what we have already achieved. The Scottish Welfare Fund, discretionary housing payments, universal credit Scottish choices are firmly established. And of course the introduction of 7 new Scottish benefits, the Carers Allowance Supplement, Young Carers Grant, Funeral Support Payment and Best Start Grants and Best Start Foods. They will all provide crucial support to people in Scotland during this difficult time. My officials in the Scottish Government and in Social Security Scotland have been working hard to respond to the impact of COVID-19. Plans were activated quickly to protect the well-being of staff who are mostly now working flexibly and importantly safely from home, whilst ensuring vital benefits will be maintained. We will of course face further challenges in the weeks and months ahead. This is very likely to have an impact on how we provide this service, but I can reassure the public today that we will continue to deliver our frontline services, applications are being processed and crucially payments are still being made. Unfortunately, this is not the case for those benefits we were on track to deliver within the next year. COVID-19 has changed our plans completely. My officials have been engaged in an intensive exercise to determine the impact on our programme, assuming the spread of COVID-19 develops as we expect, and with the impact on staffing I have outlined. We have used assumptions which see staffing levels fall for between 2 and 12 weeks due to school closures, caring responsibilities, self-isolation and the contraction of COVID-19. And this, of course, is wider than the Scottish Government. It also applies to the DWP, where staff are necessary to this joint programme of work, and to our suppliers and contractors. As members will know, the DWP are also facing challenges and concentrating quite rightly on meeting the emergent huge demand for universal credit. Presiding Officer, not long ago I had anticipated laying out my plans for launching Scottish disability payments this week. Work had been continuing at pace and I had planned to lay out plans for rolling out child disability payment and the Scottish replacement for personal independent payment to the previously agreed timescales, alongside, importantly, our plans for a new method of decision-making which would, in effect, end face-to-face assessments. Those timescales are clearly no longer possible. Alongside the clear challenges we have within the government and agency and with the UK government and suppliers, there is another reason why we cannot go ahead with our replacement for PIP. We have been working hard to introduce a new disability benefits service to meet expectations people rightly have of us. As with all our work, we have designed that service with people who have lived experience of disability and long-term health conditions and those who support them. They told us they wanted decision-making for disability assistance to take into account the professional judgment of health and social care practitioners. Therefore, we have designed a service which draws on this resource at all stages. Our new system will mean that when people apply, they can tell Social Security Scotland about the health and social care professionals who already support them. Social Security Scotland would then contact those professionals or their organisations to collect supporting information for clients. When it is the only practical way of collecting the information, a minority of working age clients would be invited to a discussion with a health and social care practitioner. If such a client consultation happens, it would be arranged to suit the client, including by phone. The words I'm using here are important: client consultation, not assessment; practitioner, not assessor. This whole service is built on a relationship of trust with the client and grounded in the professional ethics and expertise of our health and social care practitioners across Scotland. Our new model will provide a wide range of tools and guidance, including detailed medical guidance prepared by health and social care professionals. It will require new information sharing arrangements with health boards and with each local authority. And significantly, it will require an entirely new service staffed by health and social care professionals who can carry out those consultations and provide advice to case managers in Social Security Scotland. These professionals are needed now on the front line in our health service. Presiding Officer, this new way of working, a disability benefit service with respect and dignity at its heart, will happen, but it cannot happen yet. We cannot introduce child disability payment or personal independence payments until the Social Security Programme and Social Security Scotland return to something approaching normal operations. Given the uncertainty, I can offer no precise timescale on how long that will take. It will likely be several months, possibly beyond the summer, before I can do so. But I will do so as soon as possible. Now, I know people will be distressed at this decision, and I am more than sorry for that. Be in no doubt I personally, but also the many, many people who have been working so hard on these plans are absolutely devastated by this decision. But I know that there was no choice. I have therefore spoken to UK ministers, and we have agreed that they will continue delivering disability benefits for existing and new Scottish clients over a longer transition period. Well, this is not what I wanted, and it isn't what the public would have wanted either. It is simply the only way to ensure people continue to get the financial support that they are entitled to. It provides security at a time of great uncertainty and anxiety. Leaving people without financial help and assistance is something no responsible government would do, and it is not a situation I would allow. And I would like to thank the DWP for ensuring that we can continue within both governments with a safe and secure transition, even in this most difficult of circumstances. These are unprecedented times, and I have agreed 2 priorities with my officials. Priority 1 is bluntly keeping the lights on, maintaining the delivery of existing benefits for Social Security Scotland's clients, including the Carers Allowance Supplement, which will be paid as usual this year. To allow Social Security Scotland to focus on this, the Job Start payment, which would have launched in March, has been delayed. We have also made provisions within the emergency COVID bill we are debating today, allowing more time for redeterminations and appeals. To support our clients, regulations will come into force on Friday, temporary allowing carers to retain carers allowance over a break in caring, and temporary changes have been made so emotional caring also counts. I've also relaxed some rules about the timing of applications. So, for example, if someone applies for the Young Carers Grant after their 19th birthday, their application will be considered as though it was on time. Priority 2 is the Scottish Child Payment, and I will focus the remaining resources within the Social Security Programme on delivering the Scottish Child Payment as soon as we can. This new benefit will support families on low incomes and tackle child poverty, and this government will prioritise it. Introducing the Scottish Child Payment will involve enormous effort. As with disability payments, we had been on time, if not indeed ahead of schedule. Applications would have opened in the autumn, if not before. However, this timescale is dependent on a major recruitment exercise which has now been paused. We simply cannot recruit and train the staff required, and it is not possible to say when we will be able to do so. I still hope we will see applications open for the Scottish Child Payment by the end of 2020, with payments made next year. However, I must be blunt and state that if COVID-19 is with us longer, then this may change again. Members can be assured we will do everything humanly possible to deliver this payment as soon as practically achievable. There is a resolute determination from me and from everyone who has worked so hard and at such pace to make this happen at the earliest opportunity. I also hope to deliver the child winter heating assistance on schedule for winter 2020. This will make a tangible difference for severely disabled children in Scotland without impacting on Social Security Scotland's wider delivery. Presiding Officer, nobody can predict the future and how this virus will impact on our lives. I cannot make guarantees today about dates and times, but I can guarantee that the work, albeit at a slower schedule, will not stop. Though it is with a very heavy heart I make these announcements, I know members across the chamber will understand why I make them, and I hope you will all join me in thanking the staff who are working so hard that has allowed us to operate as close to business as usual during the current crisis that we face.
The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. Now, there shall be around 20 minutes for that. Would those who wish to ask a question please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Graham Simpson.
Thank you. Can I first of all thank the Cabinet Secretary for advanced sight of her statement, but I go further than that and thank her for actually discussing the statement, not only with myself but other members of the Social Security Committee earlier this morning. I think that was very, very useful. We were able to explore some of the issues, and I might actually be repeating some of the questions that I asked earlier, but we'll get it on the record. It's a depressing statement. It's not what any of us would have wanted to hear, but I think under the circumstances, it's understandable. I commend the Cabinet Secretary for having those frank discussions with the DWP, and I'd like her to expand on those and tell us in what way they're assisting when, as she says, they're up against it themselves, big style, due to the coronavirus. So if you could tell us a bit about that. Can she tell us something about the staffing levels in her own department and how they've been affected by the virus, and whether she thinks that benefits such as the child disability payment and personal independence payment can actually be delivered in Scotland in the course of this Parliament. Thank you.
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
I would agree with the member that this is an utterly depressing statement to give, and I'm sure to hear as well. And it has been a very difficult statement to put together because of the impact I know it will have on people across the country. I would like again to pay credit to the DWP, not just the ministers, particularly Justin Tomlinson, who I spoke to yesterday, for working so closely with the Scottish Government on this, but also all the DWP staff across the country who are working under extreme pressure, both because of the increase in numbers going forward for universal credit, but also because of their staff absence rates too. So I pay credit to them working under exceptionally difficult circumstances. As I said during my statement, for the agency, we have moved over 98%, I think, of our staff are now working from home. Effectively, the only people who are not are those in our mailroom in Dundee House, to ensure that we're still processing as required. This means that the system is not as efficient as it usually is, but that is necessary to ensure that we protect our workforce accordingly. We will inevitably see staff absence levels increase, I think, over the coming weeks and months, both within the agency and the programme itself. I'm afraid I won't give any timescales for child disability payment and the replacement to PIP at this point, but to reinforce that I will come back as soon as possible with those timescales and absolutely ensure that the endeavour of the Government is to deliver this as quickly as possible.
Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you, Cabinet Secretary, for your statement and the discussions that we've had in advance. We can see a glimpse of what a welcome new Scottish social security system would have looked like, and it's disappointing to everyone here and at home who rely on social security that the Cabinet Secretary wasn't updating the country on the way forward. And while people will be disappointed, I know they will absolutely accept the reason for it, though. Given that the Scottish Child Payment rollout is one of the entitlements that will still go ahead, can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what the expected impact on the Scottish budget will be, given that universal credit applications, a qualifying benefit, have increased dramatically? And can I also ask the Cabinet Secretary to say whether local authorities will be given additional administration funding to cope with the increased demand on the welcome increased Scottish Welfare Fund?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Well, yes, indeed, the statement I was intending to give this month was a much cheerier one than the one I'm doing, and the stakeholder event we had planned for the Easter recess to go through in detail what our assessment process will look like, will have provided much hope for people. We do intend, obviously, to do that at the earliest opportunity once we are able to do so. With regards to the Scottish Child Payment, this is, of course, a demand-led budget. We are anticipating seeing an increase in demand for that once it is introduced because of the increased numbers that are moving forward with the benefit entitlements such as universal credit. But I would ensure Mark Griffin and other members that because it is demand-led, if you are eligible for that benefit, you will be paid. It is too early to tell what the impact will be on the Scottish budget, but there inevitably will be an impact on that as we see that increase, and also for the other benefits. With regards to the Scottish Welfare Fund, yes, we have increased, in fact over doubled the Scottish Welfare Fund to deal with this crisis. My officials are in regular contact with local authorities to ensure that there's anything further we need to do in terms of flexibilities. And of course, as well as that funding for local authorities, directly for the Scottish Welfare Fund, there was the £50 million that was included in Aileen Campbell's statement that went directly to local authorities to deal with the impact of COVID-19 overall, and that would include the Scottish Welfare Fund. But we, of course, remain open to discussions on an almost daily basis with the local authorities to manage that demand that they're seeing coming forward.
Move to open questions and answers as concise as possible, please. Alison Johnson, followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of the statement and also the opportunity to discuss this earlier today. I fully appreciate that these very difficult times that we're facing have necessitated the actions that the Cabinet Secretary has outlined today. I know that we all regret having to take these steps, and I do very much appreciate the work Social Security Scotland has put into this. Now, I accept that it will take longer to implement than intended, but the Cabinet Secretary has said that she will, in effect, end the need for face-to-face assessments in favour of a consultation with a health professional, and even then only when strictly necessary. So can I ask what the practical differences are between a face-to-face assessment and a consultation, and how this will change the experience of applying for disability benefits?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Well, the differences will be very, very stark because, as I said in my statement, this is based on trust. So, for example, currently you will go to a face-to-face assessment. You will have no ability to pick really the dates, times and where that happens. You will go through a full face-to-face assessment, even if it's only one aspect that there might be questions over, and the entire way that that assessment is done isn't based on having a trusted relationship between that client and the individual carrying out that assessment. And that word of trust is very, very important as we move forward, because we will see a lot of these can be actually done with a couple of questions that can easily be discussed on the phone between a health professional and a client themselves, not requiring them to come in to do anything face-to-face, and on an entirely different basis of relationship between that client and that health professional. So that ability to have a trusted conversation with someone who can work through this with that level of trust and reassurance is very, very key to what we are doing. It is not an assessment of someone. It won't be an area where we are putting anyone through anything that's considered in any way inhumane. And how we will guarantee that happens is we'll work with those with lived experience and the health and social care professionals to ensure that from both sides of that experience that we build on that together.
Willie Rennie, followed by Bob Doris.
In the last 2 weeks, there's been, I understand, 800,000 claims for universal credit. To put that into context, that's up from 55,000 a week. That's an 8-fold increase. So I think we should all recognise the tremendous effort that the staff in the DWP and elsewhere are doing to process those claims. But I understand that the Scottish Government is assisting the DWP to help with that demand. Can the Minister perhaps explain a little bit more about how we're assisting to make sure we can cope with that pressure?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Well, one of the important ways that we will assist the DWP with this is an absolute recognition of the pressure that they are under. When I have made calls for the DWP to make changes to some of the reserve benefits to assist people with this, but I will also be realistic about the art of the possible in this. So, for example, we have not called for a change to the 5-week wait because that is so hardwired into the universal credit system that it cannot in any way remotely be easily changed. So there's no point asking for a change that we know cannot happen. So we need to be realistic, I think, about the asks that we're making on the UK government to support people through this. There is also a call from the DWP for staff to assist with this, and a small number, and I wouldn't overplay this, it is a small number of agency staff have went back to the DWP to assist with the applications for universal credit, and we of course stand by to assist in any further ways if we can possibly do so. What I said, I think to a member previously, it is a very, very difficult time for them as they move forward with universal credit payments.
Bob Doris, followed by Michelle Ballantyne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, I absolutely welcome the DWP have dropped face-to-face assessments due to the COVID-19 crisis, but can I ask about reassessments? My constituents on PIP and DLA hoped that from summer 2021 they would never again face a PIP or DLA reassessment and be dealt with instead by Social Security Scotland. Will the Cabinet Secretary discuss with the DWP to try and secure a moratorium on PIP and DLA reassessments, which have caused disabled constituents so much anxiety, a moratorium until a new Scottish system is put in place and reassessments can be led by Social Security Scotland, who will have a very different way of working?
Shirley-Anne Somerville.
Well, we will have a very different way of working on this aspect. I'll be blunt on this, and I hope Bob Doris recognises the context in which we are working on. The priority for the Scottish and UK governments on social security at the moment is to ensure that those who are being paid still get paid, and new clients who come forward will be able to have their claims processed. We aren't at the stage of working out the details of how this will work out in the future with DWP, but I will endeavour to keep the Parliament updated with that discussion with the DWP as it progresses. But again, I will be blunt and to say that that may not be for some time, indeed until after the summer, as both governments work within social security to ensure that we're continuing our payments to the clients that we have at the moment.
Michelle Ballantyne, followed by Shona Robson.
Thank you. And can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of the statement, and just take the opportunity to thank the UK Government and DWP, who, despite some very significant challenges of their own, will be ensuring that vulnerable Scots continue to get financial help and assistance while plans for devolved services are delayed. Can the Cabinet Secretary please tell me what discussions have taken place with local authorities around the possibility of widening eligibility for council tax reduction during the COVID-19 outbreak, because we do know that council tax is the #1 contributor to household debt in Scotland?
Shirley-Anne Somerville.
Well, one of the important aspects that we've already done as a government is to ensure that there is increased funding available for local authorities, and that was part of the announcements that Aileen Campbell made, I think it was last week, forgive me, weeks are blending into each other on these aspects, but around the money that's available for council tax reduction. One of the other important aspects with council tax reduction is that it's also greatly underclaimed. There are many people that will be out there at the moment who will be eligible for a reduction that are not receiving it, and indeed, importantly, just now there will be many people that have now fallen into a category that they may not be aware of, and that's one of the reasons why we're asking people not just to apply for universal credit if that's important, but to speak to your local authority to see if you are eligible for a council tax reduction, to speak to your energy provider to see if there's anything that can be done around that, and importantly speak to your landlord as well. We already have a very, very good system for council tax reduction in Scotland, and I think the imperative is to ensure that those who are eligible now for it know they're eligible and are encouraged to apply.
Shona Robson, followed by Rona Mackay.
We clearly couldn't have had a situation where people wouldn't have been able to apply for disability benefits. So this is a sensible, though difficult, decision the Scottish Government has had to take. But did the Scottish Government look at options such as setting up a partial service or explore other delivery methods for disability benefits, or is delivery without the partners in DWP, as you described, simply not possible?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Well, my officials and I did discuss very seriously whether there were other alternatives to asking the DWP to move forward with this, and the conclusion that I came to was that it wasn't possible. We did look to see whether there was a system that wasn't the gold standard system that we will look to introduce as early as possible, but there was another alternative, and it simply was we were not able to launch a service safely and securely with the reduction of staff, but also because of our reliance on health and social care sector. That's both within the service design and guidance and training materials that we have, the commitment to collecting, supporting information, and therefore the information sharing agreements that we required, and also the health and social care practitioners that we needed to staff up directly ourselves. Because of those requirements, it simply was not possible for us to put in place a system that was designed with Social Security Scotland being able to implement it directly.
Rona Mackay, followed by Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome that the Scottish Government will maintain a service for Scottish benefits. With regard to the increase in demand for reserve benefits and what it will have on the Scottish benefits, will the Government be able to meet that increased demand when it comes?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Well, as I said, I think to Mark Griffin earlier on, that Social Security spending is a demand-led, and therefore if people are eligible for a payment, then they will receive it. We are very strong in the affirmation that Social Security is a human right, and human rights are important now more than ever as we move into a crisis. There will inevitably be an impact both on UK and Scottish caseload, but that is uncertain at this time. But we do anticipate a sizable increase in applications, but I stress again that those will be met.
Sarah Boyack, followed by Ruth Maguire.
Can I also thank the Cabinet Secretary for her statement today? Can I welcome her call for people to take up reserve benefits? And does the Scottish Government therefore accept that a benefit uptake campaign would be desirable and at this time morally right, so that the Scottish Government can encourage people to claim what they are due, whether it's social security or welfare credits? And does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that we need employers to make proper use of furlough leave to avoid people being unnecessarily pushed into the welfare system?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Yes, I do agree with Sarah Boyack on both statements. There is responsibility on employers to act responsibly during this crisis. She's quite right to stress the importance of benefit take-up. Obviously, this was something which the Scottish Government is determined to do, but it is important now more than ever, and that's something that we are actively looking to see how we can take forward with some urgency.
And the last question in this statement is from Ruth Maguire.
Presiding Officer, I commend the Scottish Government's focus on the Scottish child payment. It was needed before COVID-19, and with the impact of the current crisis, the impact that will have on family finance, I think it's going to be even more important. Can the Cabinet Secretary explain why the Scottish Government chose the Scottish child benefit over disability benefits, please?
Shirley-Ann Somerville.
And most simply, it's because the Scottish Child Payment doesn't have a reliance on the health and social care professionals that the disability benefits do. That's not to say that the Scottish Child Payment will be in any way easy to introduce. As I said during my statement, there is a major recruitment exercise that needs to be undertaken to allow us to introduce the Scottish Child Payment, but I would again stress that we will endeavour to do so as quickly as possible.
That concludes questions on the Cabinet Secretary's statement on COVID-19 social security, and we'll move on to the next item of business.